I'd like to answer it in a simple way. Earlier I said life is a story, it's a journey. I think it matters how you were brought up. I was brought up in a cattle culture. You went out as an 8-year-old boy, 9-year-old boy, and to tender cattle, you took out 100, you came back with 99. You were not allowed to go to bed. The male family members would ballock you, but my mother would actually be less helpful. She will pour water on my bed so that I cannot go to bed. I have to go back and find that animal. Simple. Normal. It was looking painful. On reflection, I simply bow my head and say, thank you very much. The culture of work, work and more work, cannot be replaced with anything else. If at individual level we want to advance, family level, at a national level, we have to work hard. There's work to be done, it must be done.
Welcome to Infinus News, your trusted voice, both local and global. We are proudly independent, with no political affiliations and no bias. At Infinus, we don't take sides. We amplify the voices that matter. From the streets of Lusaka to the suburbs of Sydney, from Eastern Province to Western Province, from America to Austria.
Very complex exercise. And we've made progress. I believe where we sit now, we are somewhere in the region of above the 90% of resolving our debt restructuring, which was in many categories. Most of you don't know that. Category 1, bilaterals. We had category 2, category 3, polarization of debt portfolio holders, euro bonds. Very complicated, but we worked hard. We knew that by achieving debt restructuring, it will open the doors for the things that you have seen now. It's not chance. It's intentional. It's deliberate. We decided, as I said there, that the key mining sector must be restored. We've not just restored the key mining sector. We've opened new mines, new projects. Mingomba, with our American partners. We want to thank our American colleagues for taking the decision to invest in the Mingomba project. $2 billion ticket. I didn't talk about it. And it will be one of our largest mines in the country. So the trips that the president took, I know most Zambians will say, I end up with the president. Where is he going? All those trips were calculated. As I said, the American trips brought in the Mingomba and other investments. As I said, $2 billion plus under development. Our trips to China, deliberate. Upgrading our partnership, strategic, comprehensive, cooperative partnership. Deliberate, intentional. To invest in 28 shafts, which was out of commission for 23 years. CNMC. And the story that every president has told, maybe the last 3 presidents before me, about reviving Mulungushi textiles. In a few months' time, I'll be going to launch Mulungushi textiles. Born out of those intentional trips to mobilize investments. And many others. Tazara, yesterday I told Minister Tayari, in fact a month ago, I said to Minister Tayari, you really want your job, Minister? If we don't close the Tazara thing, I think our jobs will be difficult to sustain. He knew what I meant. His will go first before mine. And it was a happy moment. Yesterday, was it the day before yesterday? That after a lot of lobbying, our Tanzanian, my sister President Suluhu Hassan, was able to get her cabinet to sign off on the Tazara rehabilitation, which is what you heard the ambassador talking about earlier. So 3 countries, China, Zambia, Tanzania, working together to revive the dream of 1970s. You heard my European Union colleague there talking about the Lobito corridor. You heard deliberately pushing that under the EU infrastructure. That's what you call it, we call it. The global gateway. That's the correct term. You heard a touch on that. We've been working on that since we got elected into office. My trip to the EU Parliament was amongst the reasons I was there. It was not just to sell the country overall, but to sell the country in a specific project, energy. My trips to the UK, including having had the privilege of getting to meet then Prince Charles and the Prime Ministers then, and now King Charles, essentially was to build relationships that will lead us to the Green Growth Compact that His Excellency Honorable Bailey has talked about, and the British High Commissioner there, including the one who left. What am I saying? Intentional. What you see was envisioned. And for your eyes now, you think this is chance. It's not chance. It was meant to be like this. But lots of hard work. We can do more. Our target of 3 million tons was intentional. Our target of 10 million tons of maize was intentional to deal with the food insecurity in the country, to also take account that climate change is here to stay. And unless we go into irrigation agriculture, precision irrigation, to increase our productivity from 2 tons per hectare to 7, 8, 9, 10. We are achieving that in our Zambia investment with British investment in there. We can achieve that for small scale farmers, medium scale, large scale farmers. This is a story, Jito. So when you see the convergence, a positive convergence, I know many of you are not paying attention, positive convergence of the macro variables, inflation tailing down, exchange rate getting to be a lovely harmonious movement, and dragging interest into alignment. That convergence of the macro variables, we intended to be like that. Our job now is not to be loose, not to allow these variables to walk away from each other again, because that will distort the environment we want to build, stable, credible, predictable, and allow these investors to make a decision to invest in this country, and then we'll have more growth and more jobs and more business opportunities. That's the story.
Indeed, Mr. President.
And treasury income.
Absolutely.
And treasury income. We do need treasury income so we can support our children in school and the sick, the old, the retired. I'm here to say that when we took office, a lot of people who worked for the public government had their retirement benefits not paid for 20 years. And I'm here to say to you, out of this approach, we are now near current on paying the retirement benefits for those that worked for the government. It's not by chance again. Thank you.
You know, Mr. President, I think you're very clear with your vision, and the manner in which you convey the steps in which one must take in order to actualize economic growth as well as do transactions is one that we're all students of. The gentlemen and ladies sitting in front here who are members of the cabinet are well aware of the 4 principles associated, the 4 parameters that are associated with investments. I'm sure they can recite it. I'm sure they do it in their sleep. And it's part and parcel of how they engage with investors. And of course, it's something that you shared in your address. Now, among the many elements that has made us not only inspired, but we've seen many transactions unlocked. And as people who've been witnesses to the unlocking of very sophisticated, very complicated transactions, Mopani, very difficult to do, but if you saw the outcome, particularly from a shareholding perspective, from a capital perspective, it was quite incredible. Seeing how you were able to raise $400 million for Mamba, which will essentially allow for baseload, an additional 300 megawatts. And of course, in a sector that's very difficult to finance, and you led that. Now, behind that, there's a mindset, there's an understanding, there's a skill set. Let's go back into time. As a young professional, Mr. President, it's obvious to many of those, you mentioned a few names like Mr. Gilbert Tamba and many who knew you in the past, they knew you as someone who did transactions before government. Your fingerprints are on this economy before you entered government as a young businessman. I've heard rumors, Mr. President, of Zambia Sugar, CEC, it's the first billion-dollar market cap company, that a certain gentleman by the name of Hakainde Hichilema was there to make it happen. We've heard of the Royal Livingston, among other tourist operations. So, Mr. President, take us through that journey as a young businessman and how those experiences as a transactions person took you into this role to also lead transactions in government. Thank you.
Thank you, Jito. Thank you very much. I think life is a habit. How you lead your life, if you check properly, it's a habit, there's a trace, there's a trail there. As a young professional, purely in the private sector, never worked for government until August 2021, when I was elected into this office. God's will, courtesy of the people of Zambia. As a private sector person, part of the little piece I've been working on in the sector, obviously, is investment, transactions, helping to bring investors together, finding the need, finding the partners. Amongst the projects we worked on, as really a young person, in my late 20s, in my early 30s, was some of those transactions you're talking about. Many of you who are older enough will know that ZCCM then had many divisions. They had one division called the Power Division, right? Copperbelt Power Company, Power Division, a few names I'm looking over here, you know that story. And time came when there was need to try and decouple these divisions because of necessity, and then let them run on their own as independent businesses. One of those was the Power Division, that I got involved, led the transaction that basically culminated into the creation of the Copperbelt Power Company as you know it today. And my job was to put a transaction together, to bring partners together, and I brought together a management buyout. The Zambian citizen who worked in that division to be now shareholders, and we also found partners for them. Midlands Power, British High Commissioner, Midlands Power was a partner to the MBO and other parties. The rest is details. We created CEC, and CEC is a strong business today, one of the largest businesses with a market cap of $1 billion in this economy. That's a lot of money. That's a big business. I'm sure many citizens had no idea about that, because we worked quietly over years. And our friends in CEC will tell you that it was a difficult thing to do, but we've done it. Also, unfortunately, before we came into office, CEC was threatened to be nationalized, whatever the issue was. When we came in, the first thing I did was to stop that process and allow CEC to grow. And today, CEC is one of our premier power companies, electricity, even generating green energy, solar. And I'll be going back to commission more solar plants under CEC. I think in a small way, that's what we did. The Zambia Sugar had issues again, British heritage in the business. We restructured that business, led a project to restructure that business, and also, more importantly, to add what you see today is an outgrower scheme for Zambia Sugar. And if you fly over from Lusaka towards Livingstone, you fly over the Kafue, you see circles all around there. In the dry season, green, that's sugar under irrigation. And a lot of that sugar is not only grown by the factory, it's grown by individual farmers who we arrange to come into sugar production as outgrowers, plus Kalea smallholders, where citizens of Zambia work on 2 hectares only to produce sugar under the outgrower scheme of Zambia Sugar, and more expansion, and they're actually living off a sensible life there. It was there, but it was dying, so we reorganized, including moving the headquarters of Zambia Sugar from Lusaka. In my mind, as a lead transaction person, I said, why are you in Lusaka? The key decision makers are in Lusaka, the business is in Mazaboka. So we moved the headquarters from Lusaka into Mazaboka, and then really growth took up, went up and up. Today is a big business there. There's an industry there. And we export sugar into Europe. We export sugar in many places in the region, the Great Lakes region. The premier sugar in the region is sugar from here, from Mazaboka. We worked on that project with a lot of jobs, with a lot of business opportunities for suppliers of goods and services. The rest is history. Then obviously the project you talked about in Livingstone, the Lyric Place, really nothing there. It took me 4 years to put that transaction together. The resistance was coming from government. And today, everyone goes there, it's a premier asset, it's a destination to go to. The rest is history. Lots of jobs. Alongside that project, we worked on rehabilitating the Livingstone Airport so it could take bigger aircraft, because tourists would come to Victoria Falls but would stay over on the Zimbabwe side because our airport runway was too short, terminal buildings, facilities were so poor. So we added that to the project, as well as the Livingstone water supply project. So there was a lot of water blues in Livingstone. So we thought the town itself must lend itself to accommodating tourists and having decency, including the roads at that time. So that were auxiliary projects that we did. All of that was done when I was in my early 30s. The rest is history. Thank you, Jim.
Wow, incredible. And ladies and gentlemen, this is why Mr. President is the Chief Investment Officer, really getting a lot of transactions through, moving the economic needle, creating social impact, which is an important segue into the next question I'm going to ask you, Mr. President, because clearly all these investments, all the sophistication around finance and investment requires something beneath it that's more important, which is the impact. What does it do to the common man and woman in the city or in the country at large? I'll mention something, Mr. President. I'll expose the fact that you have a very soft heart, in case you didn't know. And part of that heart really comes from your background. I want to take you back even further. As a child growing up in the village, you come from very humble beginnings. Now, there's certain principles that have formulated policies like the enhancement of CDF and the like. So tell us about really what you experienced growing up that led you to really have this depth of empathy and the heart for the very poor, the vulnerable, and all that you speak of, Mr. President.
I think, Chito, as you were asking the question, I said, how should I answer this question? I would like to answer it in a simple way. Earlier I said life is a story, it's a journey. I think it matters how you were brought up. I was brought up in a cattle culture. You went out as an 8-year-old boy, 9-year-old boy, and to tend the cattle, you took out 100, you came back with 99. You were not allowed to go to bed. The male family members would ballock you, but my mother would actually be less helpful. She will pour water on my bed so that I cannot go to bed. I have to go back and find that animal. Simple. Normal. It was looking painful. On reflection, I simply bow my head and say, thank you very much. The culture of work, work and more work, cannot be replaced with anything else. If at individual level we want to advance, family level, at a national level, we have to work hard. There's work to be done, it must be done. My colleagues in the public sector, work has to be done. It must be done. Time is money. So, to really answer your question, a little bit of additional, that habit evolves. And school just helps, honestly speaking. It adds on. But it's the inner self is how you look at things, how you look at life. In my early days in the firm, Cooper's a librarian, and I got married as a young guy. There are days I forgot that I was married, and I will stay in the office until the work is finished. One day my wife came into the office and found me working around 04 or so. And she was screaming at me. I looked at her. I said, Madam, I'll find you home. I've work to finish here. My client needs this work. That's the last time she asked me a question. Why I was still in the office. Because she understood that I meant well. I wasn't at a girlfriend's place. No. I wasn't at a bar. No. I was in the office. And over years, she saw the benefit of that approach to work. And I'm very, very fortunate to be married to her. I'm very fortunate, honestly speaking. So I want to encourage citizens there that we can deliver, we can achieve, we can take this country where it should be. It should have been a long time ago. This should have been 100 billion, 150 billion size, 200 billion size the economy. Simple. But we lost track along the way. We thought that the country can excel without our effort, without working hard. Not possible. So I want to encourage somebody out there that we can do it. To the investors, we've opened up our country. It's open for business. We may make mistakes, not intentionally. Maybe we don't have the skill set. We don't have the understanding of the process, the flow, process flow. But you just have to point out those issues, and I think we genuinely work to address them. One of the things that we're working on now is getting the mining cadastre to function properly, to make sure that it delivers the value we want it to do for citizens of Zambia to access mining licenses, for citizens of Zambia to find partners. I never said it earlier in my message there, that we're now setting, with this young man seated here and others, Zambia Development Agency, the Minister of Commerce there, we're setting up what I brought from the private sector. First it was scoffed upon, a deal room, a transaction room, bringing Zambians with title deeds, Zambians with mining licenses, with other permits, in an environment where we can help them find partners. And that partner may be you, seated here today, or someone else, so that we can encourage the joint ventures I talked about in my presentation, and we'll all harmoniously, of course, work hard to get our businesses to be commercially viable. I must also say that this government has never had an intention to invite investors so they can make losses. No. Because if the businesses don't make money, they are not viable, you cannot then deliver the results we want, such as jobs and more jobs and treasury revenue. We want viable business, but businesses that also recognize that we should be able to be responsible business people and leave this country successful, yes, but also for the generations to come. They must still be able to drink water from the underground because it's not polluted. They must be able to raise their children and knowing that their children will have opportunities when they grow up. Including raising children who are not always strong in mathematics, in science. Raising children who are strong with the use of their hands. Plumbing, carpentry, metal working, bricklaying, skills which we were losing as a country. Now we are investing through the skills training in partnership with business. As I told you, Lumwana trains those young women from Manyama, my beloved Manyama, right? To be able to drive those super trucks. That is important too. Aspirations must not only to be a medical doctor. We need medical doctors. To be an engineer, to be an economist, an accountant. Aspirations of our children and the economy, needs of the economy, must also to produce excellent craftspeople, technicians that are essential in the production process of fertilizer, cement, indeed building our schools, our health centers, fixing our water systems, roofing our houses. That skill was dying in this country. So that minister and that minister there and the Minister of Education have now been tasked to revive our skills sector. I see the PS is also seated there. Thank you, Jito.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now, Mr. President, we've got investors from around the world here, courtesy of course, the magnetism that you bring to the investment world. And of course, many will transact here today, and there will be MOU signed. I believe, Albert, over $1 billion worth, right, of transactions being signed today. And of course, we'll be witnessing that shortly. Now, with the money that they are committing to this country, and I think after our conversation and after your speech, they will definitely want to put in more. Now, there's a way, as you're well aware, investors think. They think to the future. If I put $1 today, what would be that value of that dollar in 2031 at the end of your tenure of office? So, Mr. President, my last question to you today is that how does the Zambian economy look like in 2031 as you exit?
Simple answer. We have an ambition to grow this economy, diversified sectors. We've talked about mining a lot, but we want to see growth in agriculture, precision agriculture, processing. We want to see growth in tourism. It's already happening. We want to see growth in manufacturing, pharmaceuticals. We're working on, in the region, being the first country to produce the cholera vaccine in partnership with others. So by the time you're talking about, we want to see a resilient economy. One that will still deliver growth even in the West drought, as we did last year. 4% GDP growth in the West drought in living memory. Resilience. We want to see an economy that will be able to support big businesses, medium-sized businesses, small, as people will call it, micro, small, medium businesses, MSMEs. And that's why I'm very happy with the GIP platform we had yesterday. Growth Investment Partners. Again, British colleagues are there, Swedish colleagues are there. More importantly, our own pension fund. That's the job of pension funds, to mobilize savings. NAPSA, investing in there. Jito, I want to see, fellow citizens, investors, a country whose culture shifts from consumption orientation to investment through savings. That's what NAPSA has done. You talked earlier about investing in Mamba Phase 2 for the best load. Yes, we can bring solar. Technology yet doesn't allow us to make solar base load, though at a higher cost, with battery storage. I think we'll get there. But we raise money from financial institutions in this economy. In an afternoon's tea time at State House, the President called financial institutions in this country plus NAPSA. By the end of that day, we raised $400 million to invest in Mamba Phase 2. I want to see an economy that is able to generate such investable capital. Even as we attract other investors, we need domestic capital formation. That time. We need, for that to happen, friends like Mr. Chance Kawai, who we have been together for a long time in the business community. He keeps on accusing me of now having a double hit, seed production and now fertilizer production support. But we want an economy that people like him, who have been around for some time, can be part of the story of domestic investors, even working with partners, diversified partners. In a nutshell, culture shift, habits, cherishing hard work, reducing on appetite for leisure, knowing that there's time for everything, and our time, their time, our children, the grandchildren come. If they're in school, they must focus on school, not other things. But by 2031, God's will, courtesy of the people of Zambia, support of investors, our partners, various partners, investment partners, cooperating partners, the global community, the World Bank, IMF, UN system, private companies, my ambition, and I will work very hard with this cabinet, with the private sector partners. Saga, where is he? There. Those are friends of mine. We used to be in business together, not doing the same business, but in the business community together. I want those guys to come on board seriously and not see government as being against them, but government being with them and they being with the government for a common interest, so that 2031, I would like to see our GDP to have more than doubled by the time we are due with public office. Is it possible? Yes. We can do it. That's why this forum is here. That's why we are pleased you are all here. More than double. But I stay with doubling so that I'm not having stones thrown at me in 2031. God's will. Courtesy of the people of Zambia. I think I would like to close at this point.
Thank you, Mr. President. Everybody, a big hand for the President. At this point in time, in fact, I'd like us all to be upstanding as we exit the stage. It is now time for some Kwenyus.